I've arrived in the beautiful sunny southeast of Ireland, in the county of Waterford, famous for the crystal manufacturing, Viking and Norman invaders, and the home of the Blah. Let's find out if there's more to Waterford than being Ireland's oldest city. We're hoping to get off the beaten track and discover the more unique and quirky things Waterford has to offer. In 914, the city annals record a great fleet of Norwegian ships arriving into Port Larriga. I've just met Jack, who's been taking walking tours of Waterford for the last 25 years. And we're straight into talking about the weather.
Well, the weather always changes here. The only constant of the Irish weather is constant change.
Well, it's true what they say about Ireland and 4 seasons in one day anyway.
Canada, even 4 seasons in 1 hour sometimes. The original structure may have actually been built in wood but replaced by a stone tower and marks the eastern end of the Viking city, where the little creek joined the big river, point to the apex of your triangle city.
How are the Vikings different from the 850 Vikings to the 914 Vikings?
And the initial Viking settlement was very much raiding and slaving and in conflict with the Irish. The second group came and they discovered that it was easier to trade with the Irish than raid them. The settlements changed from a military function to a commercial one and became a town. Well, hidden behind the elegance of the 18th century carriage arch is the beach tower. Well, originally there was as many as 28. Okay. Of which about 9 or 10 now survive. By the 18th century they were militarily obsolete. Once cannons became powerful in the 16th and 17th centuries, these old medieval walls were as useless as tissue paper.
I asked Jack why, when Cromwell's troops pounded Reginald's tower with cannonballs, did it not fall down?
Because it wasn't a light cannon. The tower walls are hugely thick. Many of the cannonballs bounced off. That one managed to just lodge. Of course, the ones that bounced off were picked up immediately. Souvenirs. And there's the lost outline of roof lines of cottages and houses built against the old walls. And you can see if you look up along the corner is almost rounded, but high up there's a loop in it. That's the slit. That allowed fella inside with a bow and arrow to shoot anybody approaching the cornerstone. If you could take the cornerstone out, the tower could collapse. The walls of Waterford actually don't run along the top of the hill, which makes no military sense, but it may reflect realities on the ground. When the Normans came in and expelled the Vikings, they move up into Ballybrickin, and later when they're building the walls in the 1220s, there's already a settlement on the hill, and rather than disturb them, they build the walls slightly downslope.
I've run into Mick, the local fireman, and I'm persuading him to show me the city walls from above with his drone.
Yeah, okay.
Jeez, you've got a great chest for a firefighter. So what have you got here?
Well, it's a homemade drone. It's capable of going about 1 kilometre.
And did you build this yourself?
I did, yeah. You can customise as much as you want.
Okay, and at some stage will you be able to put a presenter on that and deliver it to a spot? Or?
To be nice, it's got a payload of kg.
Okay, so, well that rules me out. As I enter the darkness, I'm thinking again about loops and cornerstones and seeing that slit window from the inside.
This is the loop.
Okay.
In the corner, and it's all about overlapping fields of fire.
What am I going to be using to get these guys that are parking their cars?
A bow and arrow.
Bow and arrow, okay. So bow and arrow here, lean in here,
yeah.
And because they've only got a narrow gap here, they're going to be unlikely to hit me.
They can't hit you, but you can
fire down here. I shall spit on you, you foreigners!
Foreigners were in here.
Okay, the foreigners are
right there.
Okay, we'll take that again. I shall spit on you, you dirty local! I'm loving the handy Norman steps. The walls here, they weren't only built for defensive purposes, were they?
The immediate one was defence. They also were built for social engineering purposes. The walls are also important in terms of taxation and trade. Goods going into the city to be sold went through the gates. They couldn't go over the wall, they had to go through the gates. At the gate, there was a tax collector.
The pieces of the wall that are most intact are along this side?
Along the western side, yeah. Western and southern side.
Oh, we'll have to go and see some more of that.
And they're hidden all over the place. You'll find out as you explore the city.
That's one of the things I was thinking about Waterford. It's just it's quite similar in some ways to York, of course, but it really is just littered with ruins, like walking through Rome or something. Oh. With a major wardrobe malfunction, I'm calling into Fitzgerald's Menswear to see if they can help me out. Hopefully in the next couple of minutes we're going to be off with a newly fixed pair of trousers. So I'll just be able to strip off these and put these on. Now that's what I call service. Strongbow led the Norman invasion and overthrew the local Vikings. In between capturing towns and reinforcing the city walls, he took time out of his busy schedule to get married. What was the significance of these two people getting married?
It was the marriage of a Welsh Norman soldier of fortune, a gun for hire, so to speak, a mercenary, to the daughter of a deposed Gaelic king of Leinster. But the implications were huge, because when Strongbow came to Ireland, he was so successful in the first couple of years, he was now a threat to the English king, who happened to be a Frenchman, called Henry VIII. So in 1171, Henry arrived, and thus began Anglo-Irish history. Ireland, being an island, hadn't got as many edible animals as nearby continental mainland, so things like rabbits were introduced by the Normans, and they also introduced several fish species, and they introduced frogs. In 1489, Ireland was a remote, foggy island on the road to nowhere. And 10 years later, it was a roundabout on the world's most strategic waterway, linking the New World and the Old World. And Waterford became a specialised provisioning port, feeding and equipping ships to cross the Atlantic. And that made the city rich. Most famous of the long-distance trade routes from Waterford was the Newfoundland trade, a seasonal cod fishery. Anything from 3 to 7, sometimes 8,000 young men would gather in Waterford to join a fleet of ships to sail to Newfoundland to fish for cod.
Tell me about the French that came to Greyfriars.
Greyfriars, of course, is a Franciscan friary, and the Franciscans were an order of the Catholic Church. It gets named French Church from a much later arrival. The British government sponsored the Huguenots coming to Ireland, and they arrived to Waterford in the 1680s, settled in the streets around here, worshipped in the French Church, and introduced to Waterford its best-known piece of cuisine, the blah.
I'm dropping into the Medieval Museum to see one of the greatest art treasures in Western Europe.
It's about 4 metres in length, made here in Waterford in the year 1373. This document is regarded as the very, very first PowerPoint presentation ever in history. Overseas trade was the mainstay of the city. By the 1470s, the city was in deep recession. And in order to get out of recession, the mayor and the council came up with a plan to make this document and bring it to London and use it in a presentation to the king at the time, King Edward III. And the mayor stood in front of this, made his presentation by pointing to the pictures. The very last king who would have had a direct input into Waterford affairs would have been the very famous King Henry VIII.
You have a very special piece of something belonging to him that nobody else has in any other museum in the world.
The only piece of clothing to survive from him anywhere in the world now today. It's his hat. He gave as a gift here to the city in the year 1536. Our medieval vestments date from about 1460, and now they're the only set of medieval vestments from before the Reformation to survive anywhere in Northern Europe. In 1650, when Cromwell came here to Waterford, they were actually hidden away in a big series of iron chests and buried underneath the cathedral in a big vault. When his soldiers captured Waterford in 1650, they hadn't been paid for a long time. So the deal was they could steal and loot everything they liked. Vestments, the real gold wire, real gold bullion sewn into the cloth, and if you pick it all out, you have a big lump of gold.
I'm director of what's called Waterford Museum of Treasures, which is 3 museums here in what's called the Viking Triangle, which is the oldest part of the city of Waterford. Down at the very apex of the triangle is Reginald's Tower, which is a Viking museum. And then as you walk outside the door and across Cathedral Square or Bishop's Palace Square, you come to the museum of 18th, 19th and 20th century.
Eamon proudly shows me the old Viking walls that connect the 3 museums together, and shows me the spot where Vikings pulled up 11 centuries ago. So you've got Waterford Crystal here, one of the
Yeah.
biggest luxury brands in the world.
Yeah.
You've got the Medieval Museum,
Yeah.
you've got the Bishop's Palace, you've got Christchurch Cathedral there.
Yes, that's correct, yes. There's 9 national monuments in that little area alone there of the Viking Triangle.
The architect Richard Castles and the bishop who commissioned the palace died before its completion. The job passed to local man John Roberts, the only architect in the world to design both the Catholic and Protestant cathedrals in the same city. The Bishop's Palace contains an amazing collection of Waterford crystal, dating back to when the first factory was founded in 1783 by 2 members of the Quaker community, George and William Penrose. While I was just coming through the museum earlier there, I saw there's a funny looking bit of hair in a glass case over there. Who did that belong to and why is it here?
Well, that lock of hair actually belongs to the Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte of France, which is a very unusual thing to have here in this museum, in this part of the world. Basically what happened was that the niece of the Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, a lady by the name of Laetitia Bonaparte, married a Waterford man. His name was Thomas Wise. There's also a lock of hair of the Emperor's mother, who was her grandmother, and as well as that, a black and gold mourning cross. And what happened was that when the Emperor died in 1821, all the ladies in the Bonaparte family were given a mourning cross. It's the only one now to survive anywhere in the world. We're very proud to have it.
Any last surviving lock of Napoleon Bonaparte's hair as well?
Not quite.
Enthused by so much new knowledge, I wonder how much I will still remember by the morning. After our urban adventure in the Viking Triangle, I'm keen to get a bit of the countryside. We're heading about 15 minutes out of Waterford to a lovely long sandy beach surrounded by private woodlands. It's the kind of beach that is not built up at all, so you're not going to find any cafes or shops selling plastic buckets and spades. If you haven't packed your own tea and coffee, you're not going to have any here. I've come to Woodstown to meet Bill, who's going to tell me about hanging out with some very famous Americans who were here on holidays in 1967. One day you were here, somewhere around this sort of spot, playing in the sand, building sand castles, building a hole in the ground. Who was that person that you ended up playing with?
I suppose blissfully unaware of who he was at the time. I do remember his distinct American accent. He also had a bodyguard with him, a huge man by the name of Mr. Walsh.
You got to know John Kennedy here.
We just started playing together as children do. I didn't know him, obviously he didn't know me. Our holiday that year happened to coincide with the Kennedy visit.
And what were your initial impressions of him?
His American accent stood out. He had longish hair down to here and he had a fringe black hair.
You got an invite to lunch one day.
I did. I remember being up in the house. I don't remember what we got to eat, but I can remember the dessert. There was pears, I think there were tin pears, they were huge. I'd never seen them before, how big they were. There were probably tin pears that were brought in by the Americans themselves.
It's lovely to catch up with you and hear your stories about John Kennedy.
Yeah.
And the Kennedys and your brush with celebrity status.
Yeah, my only one actually.
You never met anybody famous again, huh?
No.
After hearing about Bill's adventures with the Kennedys, I decided I needed to seek out some adventure for myself. I've arrived at the wonderful Dunmore East Adventure Centre and Karen has invited me to test out the super new exciting activity. So Karen, where exactly are we going and what are we doing?
Okay, so what we're going to do now, Kevin, is we're going to actually go down through a mine shaft.
I'm going to be putting my newly repaired trousers through their paces and see if they will make it through the cave intact. But more importantly, will I?
Beauty of this caving system is that it's a controlled challenge. This particular one here, there's a lighting system that can go on if people get nervous, and we also have some exits along the way. We've put in extra obstacles into it as well, so there's stalactites and stalagmites that you've got to squeeze past, and we've got another couple of little surprises as well on the way.
Oh, fantastic. They could have got a slightly smaller presenter from this row. I'm thinking Balsam first.
Go for it, yeah?
Okay,
just
so
mind the trilobite, mind the trilobite.
Okay. Ooh.
Okay, so best thing to do is go head first. Dive in! And up to the other side. All right, Kevin.
Here we go!
You're nearly there.
Oh, crikey! This is absolutely brilliant. Not done anything like this before. Following me is the ever-dedicated Andrew, who I leave behind to chase up Karen, to ask her one more question. With so many boats coming and going around here, there must have been a shipwreck story or two.
There's a good one I heard actually in a couple of years ago. Apparently there was a tall ship that was full of pigs sailing up between, I think it was Ballymacaw and Dunmore, and it was a really, really stormy night. Very, very dark, stormy, lightning, the whole lot. You can imagine the scene. These guys were trying to haul down the sails. It was really, really frightening stuff. But they didn't manage to keep the boat on the right track, and they hit the rocks just off Dunmore East here, and all the pigs went into the water. Everybody was lost. A couple of the locals got wind of this, so they all came down. It was in the middle of the night, like, you know, pitch black. You can imagine climbing down cliffs, didn't know what was going on down there. So one particular guy, you know, he grabbed a pig and brought it back up to his house, alighted himself, put it on the kitchen table, and off he went to bed. And he was after having a few pints, I think, in the local bar. But as the story goes, anyway, the wife went down the next morning to make the breakfast and looked at the kitchen table, and she nearly died. And what he had actually picked up was one of the sailors. So he had a body of a sailor instead of a pig on the kitchen table.
Just up the road, I'm going to call into a bar long been the haunt of sailors. I'm looking forward to something special on the table. A pint of Irish stout and a relic of an old enemy submarine. Here we are at Power's pub in Dunmore East, and I'm about to have a pint. Very exciting stuff. I believe you've got something from UC 44.
When we were young, my mother used to roll all our beds with the hot water. About 5 or 6 years ago, a guy came into the bar here. He was looking around the pub and he saw this thing up. He said, "Do you know what you have up there?" I said, "No." I said, "It's a hot water bottle." "No," he said, "it isn't, it's a bomb." And we always took it that it was some of the German mechanics on the submarine used to use the old shells to make hot water bottles.
The German World War I submarine had been laying mines in Waterford Harbour when it accidentally blew itself up. I'm left wondering, had Peter's mother realised that it was responsible for sinking 29 Allied ships? The submarine still lies just off the headland, buried beneath the sand. Waterford remembers all those lost at sea, including the sinking of the SS Formby and the SS Konenberg by a sister submarine of UC 44. For this morning's itinerary, I'm taking a short drive from Tremor and a pair of swimming trunks. I'm a little bit anxious as it's looking freezing cold out there. I've just met Jimmy, who's been showing off to the ladies with his push-ups. Not wanting to be left behind, I lay down the challenge.
I want to go for a swim after this. You're cheating, Jimmy. You're cheating.
So Billy, you are the oldest member of the Guillamene swimming club?
Well, I would think so, yes. I've been swimming here as far back as August the 24th, 1943. I was 13 at the time. In the olden days, I used to dive in, but when I got over 80, the doctor told me, he said, "Look," he said, "don't be diving into the water," he said, "because the shock might be too much for you." He said, "Gently wet your back of your neck," and he suggested get someone to throw water on top of you. So I decided there and then, I'd just bring a bucket out. So having stood in the water and anointed myself with this water with my hands, I then threw 3 buckets on top of myself, and that broke the shock. Then I could slide into the water and not feel the cold.
Ireland as a whole is probably, I think, the best open water swimming location in the world, and it's precisely for the reason that people think it shouldn't be, which is the cold water. We're colder than pretty much everywhere else that doesn't freeze over, but we don't freeze. At the moment, I could probably do about 30 minutes. Most of the rest of the guys will be doing about 30 seconds to a minute. The ice mile swim is a mile swum under 5 degrees with no wetsuit. of which about 100 people in the world have done it.
And have you done it?
And I'm one of them. It was on my third attempt. It's incredibly stupid and dangerous. It was 3.3 degrees.
And you swam 1 mile in 3.3 degrees.
I don't remember much after the swim was over.
Donald, what's the furthest swim you've ever done?
Well, in distance terms, it was around Manhattan Island, which is 28.5 miles. But in time terms, it was English Channel. It was 18.5 hours, is usually just a story full of pain and endurance, but mine had pain and endurance, and the accident where the boat rolled on top of me. That caused me to get caught under the boat for a couple of seconds. I couldn't swim for about 10 minutes. I got caught in an extra tide, and then I ended up swimming nearly to Belgium. So I was worried that I would land in Belgium because it wouldn't be counted. No, it was force 5 winds.
And
for 10 hours.
When you arrive in France, are you supposed to sort of go through customs, or how does that work?
You turn around, you get off beach, back to the boat as quick as possible, no matter how much pain you're in, because the French do not want you there. They don't support English Channel swimming. They don't want people doing it.
So when you were swimming around Manhattan Island, 28.5 miles, how many breaks did you have?
Well, none. You don't have breaks. You're not allowed breaks. Long distance swimmers aren't allowed wetsuits or breaks.
The scary thing is, I'm already cold after taking my top off. This is not just a life-saving device. Only a couple of weeks ago, an orca whale was washed in across the side there, and my thought was, if I had an inflatable shark, it might keep the other orcas in the pod away from me. Okay, Donald, show me what to do. Let's go. Let's get it over and done with. There's just going to be no easy way of doing it. So maybe I should do a little... Oh, jeez, it's slipping. Oh, dear God! I'll do the splash, will I? Splash on your face. Splash in the face. Actually, it's actually quite nice and warm. Surprisingly mild, but this time of year. I can't see what all the fuss is about. Nearly done. Well done, Kevin. Well done. Thank you very much. My hero. I'm on my way to the Metal Man, built to warn off ships from the coast. On stormy nights he's believed to chant, keep out, good ships from me, for I am the rock of misery." I'm going to test out a local legend. I'm told if girls hop around the Metal Man 3 times in a clockwise direction, they will be married within 1 year. Brilliant, an Australian backpacker. Do you mind me asking, are you married?
No, I'm not. The only thing I've picked up since being in Ireland is a bit of a cold.
Local legend says that if you hop around this Metal Man 3 times in a clockwise direction in your bare feet, you'll be married within a year. Anyway, maybe you'd keep in touch. Here's my card, and you let us know how it goes for you.
Thanks very much.
I only realised in the last lap that our enthusiastic backpacker hopped the wrong way around the Metal Man. Whoops. In the next episode of Unique and Quirky Waterford, I continue to immerse myself in all things Waterford has to offer. I get to visit some grand estates, open to the public and amongst the best gardens in the world. I get to stay at Ireland's most luxury boutique hotel, perched on the cliff overlooking Ardmore Bay. I go behind the scenes to meet the head chef responsible for its culinary successes.
Michelin doesn't always define that it has to be like this.
Before tasting our way through the cocktail menu. I get out on the bike at the fabulous Copper Coast, and Donald takes me around some of the gems of the UNESCO Global Geopark. I catch up with Garvin, who tells me they're currently converting this old railway line into a cycle path and walkway. The tights come down. We discover a speakeasy and learn the history of the Irish War of Independence as told through beer.
It's here, and you have Eamon de Valera on this side.
Before continuing my long walk east.